They say the ocean is mostly unexplored. More than 80% of it remains untouched, unseen. We map the surface. We sail across it. We fish from it. But beneath it, that's another story. Because sometimes the sea sings back. And sometimes something answers. This story isn't folklore. It isn't a sailor's drunken tale. It's a collection of strange encounters reported off the Atlantic coast, from North Carolina down to the Florida Keys. And if the recordings are real, then whatever lives beneath those waters isn't a myth. It's waiting. October 2018. 30 miles off the coast of Cape Hatteras, the fishing trawler Caroline. May wasn't supposed to be anywhere near that deep. Captain Elias Turner had been fishing those waters for 22 years. He knew the currents, the storms, the reefs, the dead zones where the radio went quiet. But that night, the sonar picked up something moving beneath the hull. Something large. Something fast. It wasn't unusual to detect whales. Even large schools of tuna could create strange echoes. But this was different. It moved in circles. Perfect circles. Around the boat. The first mate, Jacob Reyes, leaned over the console and squinted at the monitor. "That ain't right," he muttered. The signal wasn't solid. It flickered, almost like it was phasing in and out. Then the hydrophone, the underwater microphone, not mechanical, not natural. It was singing. At first, they thought it was feedback, a warped frequency bouncing through the Atlantic. But when Elias turned the gain higher, the sound sharpened. It wasn't random. It had rhythm. Long, drawn, outtones rising and falling in haunting patterns, almost like a voice trying to mimic language. Jacob swallowed hard. Sounds like a woman. The deckhands laughed at first, until the singing changed. It moved closer, and closer, and closer. The sonar screen glitched again, and this time, the signal surged straight upward, directed beneath the boat. Something hit the hull. Not hard enough to damage it, just enough to make a point. Everyone on deck froze. The singing stopped, and then the water went completely still. They should have left. They didn't. Curiosity is dangerous at sea. Elias ordered the spotlight turned toward the stern. The beam cut across the black Atlantic like a blade. For a moment, nothing. Then, a pale shape broke the surface. It was too tall to be a dolphin, too slender to be a seal. It floated upright, just for a second, and then it slipped back under. One of the deckhands whispered, That was a person. But it wasn't. They saw the lower half. Not legs. A tail. Long. Scaled. Reflecting silver beneath the light. And then the singing returned. Only now. It sounded amused. They made it back to shore before sunrise. Nobody talked about what they'd seen. Nobody filed a report. Until Jacob. Reyes didn't show up for the next trip. His truck was still in the marina parking lot. His phone was inside. His apartment untouched. But security footage from the harbor told a different story. At 3:12 a.m., Jacob walked alone down the dock. Slowly, deliberately, as if following something. He stepped onto the very edge of the pier, paused, and then he stepped into the water. Not fell, stepped, as if someone were holding his hand. His body was never recovered. 2 weeks later, the Coast Guard confiscated the hydrophone recordings from the Caroline May. Official explanation: unusual marine mammal activity. Unofficially, the audio technicians refused to classify it because when they isolated the frequencies, they found patterns, repeating sequences, like coded communication, and beneath the layered tones, there were words. Not English, not any known language, but structured, intentional. One analyst resigned the following day. In a private message to a colleague, she wrote, "It knows we can hear it. Stories of mermaids aren't new. Sailors have reported them for centuries. But the descriptions rarely match. Some speak of beautiful women with long hair and soft voices. Others describe skeletal faces and needle, like teeth. Ancient maritime logs from the 1700s mention sea wives, luring entire crews overboard. In 1493, even Christopher Columbus recorded seeing 3 female forms rising from the sea, though historians later claimed they were manatees. But what if the stories changed, because the creatures changed, adapted, evolved, watching us the way we watch them, waiting for technology to improve, waiting until we could finally hear them clearly. March 2021. A marine biology research vessel off the coast of Georgia, equipped with state-of-the-art sonar and submersible drones. Dr. Hannah Whittaker was leading the expedition. They weren't searching for myths. They were mapping deep coral structures, until the drone camera caught something at 300 feet below. At first glance, it looked like kelp. Long strands drifting vertically. But kelp doesn't swim upward. The camera adjusted focus. The shape turned. Large black eyes reflected the lens. The face was almost human. The mouth opened. Rows of thin, inward, curving teeth. And then, the drone feed cut to static. Moments later, the cable snapped. Something had pulled it. Hard. Back into the dark. 2 nights later, the research vessel anchored for data recovery. The ocean was calm. Too calm. At 20:47 a.m., multiple crew members reported hearing singing. Through the air. Soft. Close. Right outside their cabins. Dr. Whittaker stepped onto the deck. The moonlight painted the water silver. And there, drifting just beneath the surface, was a woman, long black hair floating around her face, eyes half closed, smiling. Her skin shimmered like fish scales beneath the light. She lifted one hand slowly, beckoning. Dr. Whittaker felt her body move forward. Without permission, without thought. The singing grew louder. Inside her head, she reached the railing, climbed it. And then, a crewman tackled her to the deck. The figure vanished instantly, as if it had never been there. But claw marks remained in the railing. Deep, not human. The Coast Guard dismissed both incidents. Classified files sealed. Equipment replaced. Reports buried. But fishermen along the southeastern coast have started sharing something strange. Boats drifting at night, empty, engines still running, and faint singing echoing from beneath the hull. Not calling for help, calling for them. Because the ocean doesn't give back what it takes. And whatever is singing now is getting closer to shore. Boats were found drifting. Crew members vanished without a struggle. Recordings captured songs no human throat could produce, and whatever lived beneath the Atlantic was no longer staying offshore. Summer 2022. Coastal authorities from North Carolina to northern Florida began documenting a pattern. 6 vessels, all under 40 feet. All found adrift. No distress calls. No signs of violence. Just empty decks. Engines idling. Personal belongings untouched. On one boat, a half-eaten sandwich sat on the console. On another, a fishing rod bent over the side. Line still in the water. As if the crew had stepped away for only a moment. But the most disturbing detail: every single vessel had deep scratches along the hull, parallel, curved, like something with claws had circled it repeatedly. Listening, waiting. The town of Beaufort, North Carolina, was the first place it happened on land. At first, it was dismissed as hysteria. A teenage boy claimed he heard singing near the docks at night. A couple walking the shoreline reported seeing a woman crawling from the surf. Security cameras caught nothing but static at the time of the sightings. Until August 14th, at 1:12 harbor surveillance picked up movement near Pier 6. A pale figure dragging it slowly across wet sand. It didn't walk. It pulled itself forward using elongated arms. Its lower half remained hidden in shadow. The footage cut out after 7 seconds. When it returned, the sand was smooth again, except for one thing, a trail leading back into the water. Dr. Whitaker refused to let it go. After her near fall overboard, she had become obsessed. She reviewed sonar archives, cross-referenced migration patterns, compared acoustic signatures, and what she found terrified her. The singing wasn't random. It was seasonal. It intensified during late summer, breeding season for many marine species. But this wasn't courtship. It was coordinated. Multiple signals. Call and response patterns, like a pod or a colony, mapping human activity, testing proximity, adapting to coastline traffic. And the closer they moved to shore, the more disappearances occurred. September 3rd, a tourist charter never returned from a sunset cruise. The Coast Guard located the boat the next morning, less than half a mile from shore. Blood covered the deck, but no bodies, no signs of struggle. Just long streaks dragged toward the railing. Underwater drones were deployed. At 30 feet below, they found something new. Not coral. Not wreckage. Structures. Built from debris. Fishing nets woven together. Wood fragments interlocked. And bones. Human bones. Arranged deliberately, in circular formations, like nests. As the drone approached, something moved within one of them. A face. Pale. Distorted. Eyes too large. Mouth splitting open, wider than human anatomy should allow. The feed ended with a violent jolt. Then silence. The next development was subtle. 911 calls began increasing from coastal neighborhoods. Residents reported for whispering outside bedroom windows, for wet handprints on glass, the sound of something dragging across rooftops at night. One caller described waking up to find seawater pooled on their bedroom floor. Another swore she saw a woman standing at the edge of her yard, hair hanging over her face, skin glistening under moonlight. When police arrived, nothing but salt residue remained, at a faint smell. Rotting seaweed. Dr. Whitaker gained access to older hydrophone files, classified ones. She isolated a repeating tone buried beneath the singing. Lower frequency, almost like a pulse. When amplified, the pattern resembled echolocation, but far more complex. It wasn't just communication. It was scanning, studying human brainwave frequencies, matching them, adapting to them. The song wasn't music. It was neurological manipulation, a resonance that bypassed rational thought, explaining why Jacob stepped into the ocean calmly, why Dr. Whittaker climbed the railing without realizing it, why entire crews left boats without a fight. The creatures weren't dragging victims down. They were being invited. October brought a violent coastal storm. Hurricane. Force winds battered the Carolinas. Tide surged, flooding submerged docks and lower streets. Emergency services were overwhelmed, and in the chaos, reports exploded. Dozens of sightings along flooded neighborhoods. Figures moving between houses. Swimming through streets. Witnesses described them clearly now. Upper bodies humanoid, but elongated. Skin semi-translucent. Veins faintly glowing beneath the surface. Lower halves powerful. Not delicate tales of myth, but muscular fins built for speed. And the teeth, rows upon rows of inward hooks, designed not to bite, but to hold. The final confirmed event occurred at Cape Lookout Lighthouse. During the height of the storm, 3 maintenance workers sheltered inside the structure. Radio transmissions captured fragmented audio. They're climbing. Not possible. They're using the rocks. The final transmission. Like they're not drowning. When rescue teams reached the lighthouse at dawn, the door was broken inward. Interior walls were soaked with seawater. Long scratch marks spiraled up the staircase. But the most chilling detail, wet drag marks led to the top balcony, over the railing, down the opposite side, as if something had carried them out to sea. Not pulled, carried. Dr. Whittaker's final recorded theory was never published officially, but she sent a private email to a colleague before disappearing 2 months later. It read, "The ocean is changing. Temperatures rising. Ecosystems collapsing. If they've been down there for centuries, we're forcing them upward. This isn't hunting. It's migration." After that message, she was reported missing. Her car was found near a private marina. Her shoes left neatly on the dock. No sign of struggle. Just faint water pooled where she had stood. Winter arrived. Sightings decreased. Disappearances slowed. Authorities declared the incidents closed. But fishermen now refused to work certain areas offshore. They speak quietly of shapes pacing their boats beneath the surface, of glowing eyes just below the waterline, and sometimes, late at night, beachgoers report hearing singing from the dunes, not from the sea, from the sand, as if something waits just beyond the tide line, learning to breathe air a little longer each time, adapting, because myths don't evolve, predators do. And in G, if you ever walk alone along the Atlantic coast, and the ocean seems too quiet, and you hear a voice carried softly over the waves, don't follow it. Don't step closer. And whatever you do, if you see a pale hand reaching from the surf, do not take it, because the sea doesn't need to drown you anymore.
Now,
It comes to shore.